All right, today we are going to be talking about identifying angles. On Monday, we talked about measuring and drawing angles, and today we're going to be doing identifying angles. So you will need your math book open to page 326. You'll need the protractor that you used on Monday, and you'll need workbook 114 from the math packet in your blue folder that says identify angles at the top. So we're going to start off looking at our math notes first and talking about the different types of angles that there are. When we identify angles, we identify them in 4 different ways. The first way is a right angle. And a right angle is an angle that has a measure of exactly 90 degrees. So if you measured something and it measured 90 degrees, it is considered a right angle. It always makes a perfect L if you're looking at it that way when you talk about a right angle. An acute angle is any angle that is less than 90 degrees. So it can measure 1 degree all the way to 89 degrees, anywhere in between there, and it's an acute angle, like a cute little angle because it's small. Then we have an obtuse angle, and that is an angle that is greater than 90, so anything bigger than 90. So it can measure 91 degrees all the way up to 179 degrees. Anything in that range, those would all be considered an obtuse angle because they're bigger than a right angle. And then finally, we have a straight angle, which is easy to identify because it's a straight line. And every straight angle has a measure of exactly 180 degrees. So whenever you see a line with the 2 arrows at the end of it and it's a straight line, we know that that's considered a straight angle. So if we take a look at the pictures of these angles, if we take a look here, get them on here. If you sometimes, you'll see this symbol right here, and this is the square inside of an angle. If you ever see that symbol, that is a right angle symbol. You don't even need to measure it because it automatically is telling you that it's a right angle. So we would know by seeing that square that angle ABC is a right angle. If we look at the next angle, at angle DEF, and I looked at my protractor, remember when we talked about the protractor the other day, we know an angle is made up of 2 rays that share the same vertex, and anytime we measure with our protractor, we always have to put our protractor arrow right on the vertex. We have to make sure that our bottom line is perfectly lined up with the bottom of the protractor, so we only see about half that arrow when we line that up. And we see what the measure of this is. I'm not going to extend my angle on this one today since it's in my math notes, but we'll take a look at the measure of this one. And this one looks like it's coming out. And remember, I'm using the inside numbers because the ray down here is pointing right. When the ray points right, we always use those inside numbers. If the ray down here was pointing left, then I would have looked at the outside numbers. But since it's pointing to the right, we're taking a look at these inside numbers. This angle here is about 45 degrees. Since 45 degrees is smaller than 90, I know that this is an acute angle. It's a small angle, it's 45 degrees. Our next angle here, GHM, same thing, I'm going to go ahead and measure it. I notice that this ray is pointing to the right, so when I put my protractor on my vertex, I know that I'm going to still be using the inside numbers. I'm going to line my arrow right up with my vertex. I'm going to lay down my protractor. And when I check this angle out, it's about 120. I'm still using those inside numbers. It looks like it's about 120 degrees. Since that is bigger, greater than 90 degrees, I know that this one is an obtuse angle. And finally, if I take a look at JKL, it's a straight line. And I know that a straight line is a straight angle, and I already know that the measure of it is 180 degrees. Because that's what runs along the bottom of our protractor. If you look at the bottom of page 326 in your math book, I want to take a look at that picture at the bottom right of page 326. It's next to 17, 18, 19, and 20. So I want to take a look at that picture for a minute since they've combined several angles into one. So I redrew that picture onto my board. Hopefully we can see it. So I redrew the picture onto my board so we could see that picture and take a look at this. In this particular part of that, they want you to name the angles. And the first one on 17 says 4 acute angles. And they want you to look at that picture that's right there next to it on the bottom of page 326 to identify 4 acute angles. Well, we know from what we just talked about, an acute angle is less than 90 degrees. So if I look at this, even though there are several angles in one, I need to find 4 of them that are acute. Well, the first one that I see, I forgot to put my letter D, so I'll add that here. The first one that I see is DFE here. DFE, it tells me right there that it's only 10 degrees, and I know that's an acute angle since it's less than 90 degrees. So the first one that I'm going to write down, and you write the angle sign, just like that, angle DFE. That would be one acute angle. If I keep looking, this area in here is 80 degrees from here to here, not from the bottom. From here to here is 80 degrees. I also know that that's less than 90, so this would be an acute angle, DFC. That would also be an acute angle. So angle DFC would count as an acute angle. I can see this here is 55 degrees. So I know that BFC would also be an acute angle, angle BFC. And then finally I can see this little guy down here, 35 degrees, smaller than 90, so I know it's acute, AFB. So angle AFB would be our last acute angle for number 17. If we look at number 18, it says to find 2 right angles. Well, I know a right angle has to equal exactly 90 degrees. It can't be anything but only 90 degrees. I also talked about it forming a perfect L when you look at that angle. So here, I see one right here. I can also verify this. This is 80 degrees and this is 10 degrees, and if I add those together, that does equal 90. So I know that this right here, EFC, or you could also call it CFE, angle CFE is 90 degrees. So that would be one of the right angles, and we would have to write our angle sign, angle CFE. Now it tells me in number 18 that there's 2 right angles. I know that this isn't a right angle because it's only 80 degrees and neither is this. So I'm going to look over the same thing here. I notice that this one's 55 degrees and this one's 35 degrees. If I were to add those up, that also equals 90. So I know that CFA is also a right angle. So that would be my other one, and I would put angle CFA. If we take a look at number 19, it wants a straight angle. Well, we know that has to be a straight line, and there's only one of them. So on number 19, we would write angle AFE. Now when you're typing in your answers today, you're not going to be able to put that angle sign in front of your answer, but I wanted you to see how you would actually write those when you would actually be writing them down. We put that angle sign in front of them. And on number 20, it wants 3 obtuse angles. Well, we know obtuse has to be bigger than 90 degrees. So I know this one doesn't work, and I know this one doesn't work, and this one doesn't work, and this one doesn't work, and neither do our right angles. Those can't work because it has to be bigger than 90 degrees. So if I look at EFB, that's much bigger because it would be all of this. So that would be one of my obtuse angles, would be EFB. You could also say BFE. That order doesn't matter so much, just as long as you put the vertex in the middle. If I keep looking, I know I need another one. So I'm going to look and see what else I can find. I could go the other direction and say, okay, well, AFD would also be, because all of this would be bigger than 90 degrees. So AFD is also an obtuse angle, so angle AFD. And then if I keep looking at it and look for another one, I can do here, here, here. If I just do BFD, and that would encompass this area. So I know angle BFD would also be an obtuse angle to give me my third obtuse angle. So sometimes when you're identifying angles, it may look like a picture like that, and that's why I wanted to do that one together right out of your book so you could see that. Now, if we look at the top, starting with number 1 on page 326, they give you the measure, and they're asking, so looking at that measure that they've already measured, would that be an acute angle, a right angle, an obtuse angle, or a straight angle? Well, we know anything less than 90 degrees, anything less than would be an acute angle. If it is exactly 90, it would be a right angle. If it is more than 90 but less than 180, it would be obtuse. And if it's a straight line that's 180 degrees, we know it's a straight angle. So if I look at number 1 and it's 34 degrees, what kind of angle would that be? It would be acute since it's less than 90. Number 2, 110 degrees, what kind of angle would that be? Obtuse, because it's more than 90. Number 3 is 12 degrees. What kind of angle would that be? Acute, because it is smaller, less than 90. Number 4 is 90 degrees, so what kind of angle would that be? A right angle. If it's an exact measure of 90, we know it's a right angle. And number 5, 180 degrees. That would be a straight angle. If we jump to number 12, I'm just going to go ahead and jump to number 12 there. 179 degrees. What kind of angle do you think that would be? That would be obtuse because it's bigger than 90 but less than 180. You will have some of those on your homework page today as well. The only other thing that we're going to talk about today are perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines. So let's take a look here what that even means. Perpendicular lines are intersecting lines that form right angles. They can look a couple different ways, and that's why I wanted to show you 2 different ways here. They can look like this, where they make a perfect cross, but all of these, if you measured them, they would be 90 degrees. This would be 4 right angles. Perpendicular lines can also look like this, where they've dropped off the bottom part of that cross, where it crosses like this, almost like an upside down T. But both of these would still have 2 right angles here. If you measured these would be right angles. Intersecting lines have to have right angles. If you had lines that intersected like this, they're just crossing each other. But if I try to measure these angles, none of them are going to measure to 90 degrees. This looks like it would be an obtuse angle, an acute angle, an acute angle. They can't have those kinds of angles. The only kind of angles in perpendicular lines are right angles. So these would just be intersecting lines not perpendicular lines. So that's kind of the difference between those. Perpendicular has right angles, intersecting lines do not have right angles. Let's take a look at your homework page for today. You should have workbook 114, and it says identify angles at the top. It should be the next homework sheet in your math packet that's in your blue folder. And you have a Google document on our classroom that you will fill in. You'll use this to do your work from, and then just type your answers into the Google document on our Google Classroom. On 1 through 8, they've given you the measure, just like we just practiced at the top of page 326. So you are going to type acute, right, obtuse, or straight. Those are your only answer choices on those based on the measure that they're giving you. I noticed that on 9 through 15, there are 2 different directions, which means you're going to have 2 different answers. On the first one, it says, find the measure of each angle. So guys, you're going to go back to what we did on Monday with your protractor. So the first thing that I'm going to do with this protractor, now number 1, they gave you the box, so you already know what it is. Number 2, it's a straight line, so you should already know the measure. But what you're definitely going to want to do, just like we did on Monday, first I'm going to turn my paper because I don't like the way these angles are going. I'm going to take my protractor and line that up perfectly, and I'm going to extend out my second line to make it easier for me to measure. You have to do that first. I'm going to make my vertex, the vertexes are better today. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Now what I notice, my friends, is that this ray that I'm measuring right here is pointing left. So I know I'm going to, on this one, use the outside numbers. And when I lay it down and I measure it, I'm looking at the outside numbers when I write down my degrees. Also, now that you know the difference between an acute angle and an obtuse angle, it wouldn't really make sense for you to measure this and tell me that it measured 35 degrees and then write obtuse. So you need to be careful with that today too, that whatever measure you write down here, it should measure whatever angle you're telling me that it is. So the first thing you're going to do is measure each angle using your protractor, just like we did on Monday's homework. That's the first part. So the first thing you're going to do is write what it equals. Remember, when we write protractor measurements, we always use the degree sign. I've already put them onto the math workbook page for you since you can't type those in very easily, so I went ahead and put the label for you on those. But when you write them, you always add a degree sign. The second direction says, then classify the angle. So you're going to do the same thing that you did up here. After you measure it and write the measurement, next to it you're going to have, is it acute, is it right, is it obtuse, is it straight? So those are the 2 things you're going to have on 9 through 15. First the measurement, then what kind of angle it is. When you get down here to number 16, 17, and 18, this is the same thing that we also did. I did it on the whiteboard out of our math book. You're going to use this picture right here that has all of these different angles in it. Now, they're only asking you to name one though. So you only need to name one acute angle. You won't be able to write the angle sign like I did in the example, but you will be able to write the 3 letters as 3 capital letters. So you'll name an acute angle, an obtuse angle, and a right angle using this here, okay? And then the last 3, or the last 4, I'm sorry, you have to tell whether they are perpendicular, yes or no. Well, it says use a protractor to check. Remember, when we talked about perpendicular lines, they have to have 90-degree angles. If they have anything but a 90-degree angle, they are not perpendicular. So you could measure the angle, and if it's a 90-degree, you're going to write yes. If it's not a 90-degree, you're going to write no. Those are the only 2 choices, is yes and no on these last 4, and you can use your protractor to help you decide, are those right angles, are those not right angles? So remember, you're going to extend out your line, make sure you line up your vertex, and measure accurately. So it's a yes, no on 19, 20, 21, and 22. So you can do your work right on this workbook page and then just type your answers onto the Google Doc that I have on our Google Classroom. And I will see you next time.